Next on Newsmax Prime, some clarity from Foggy Bottom on Hillary Clinton? The State Department releases some of her emails. What will that mean for her presidential campaign? We'll discuss. Then, the Bible and the border. Is there a biblical approach to addressing illegal immigration? We'll talk about it. And comedy is not pretty, but is it conservative? You'll meet a self-described conservative comedian. No joke. Newsmax Prime starts now. Welcome to Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, Friday means the end of the work week for most of us, but for embattled politicians, it often presents the opportune time for a document dump. That's the case for Hillary Clinton, courtesy of the State Department. It released some of her emails today, and Miranda Kahn has more from our newsroom. Miranda?
JD, the almost 300 emails are a small part of the 30,000 that she turned over to the State Department from her private email server. Meanwhile, questions abound about what she knew and when she knew it.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
A defiant Hillary Clinton testifying before the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee 2 years ago. Now her question is more literal than rhetorical, as her actions could make a difference in her campaign for president. The New York Times reports that longtime Clinton confidant Sidney Blumenthal advised the Secretary of State that the attack was carried out by terrorists. Blumenthal sent that email memo on September 13th, 2 days after the Benghazi attack. Yet despite this information, Secretary Clinton maintained the narrative being pushed by the Obama administration that the attack was spontaneous in response to an allegedly anti-Muslim YouTube video. But Mrs. Clinton was noticeably absent from initial public discussions on Benghazi. Instead, that duty went to then UN Ambassador Susan Rice, who appeared on all 5 Sunday Network interview programs on September 16, 2012. This morning, New York Republican Congressman Peter King called into question the contradictory actions of Mrs. Clinton. And he said, obviously, on the second day, Sidney Blumenthal is telling Hillary Clinton that the video had nothing to do with Benghazi. This was a terrorist attack. This is her person on the ground giving her this information. She says, let's give this out. Then, when the bodies are returned home, she goes along with the same script and same phony story that the Obama people put out in what was caused by the video. That, to me, is inexcusable. It may be inexcusable to Congressman King, but the larger question confronting Mrs. Clinton and her campaign is this: will her fellow Democrats excuse this latest controversy? JD?
Thanks, Miranda. With more on the story, we call on a couple of gentlemen well-versed in politics and the law. First, Skyping in from Traverse City, Michigan, my old colleague from the House of Representatives and the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the House, Pete Hoekstra. And also with us via telephone from Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, Harvard law professor and Newsmax blogger Alan Dershowitz. Alan is the author of Terror Tunnels, the case for Israel's just war against Hamas. Thanks to you both, and Pete, we'll start with you. This whole situation where Sidney Blumenthal told Hillary Clinton in a memo 2 days after the attacks that there was no YouTube video to blame. Why do you think she stayed with the administration story?
JD, it's very clear why she has had to stick to this message, that it was a demonstration. If she would have admitted that it was a real attack, a planned attack against the consulate in Benghazi, it would have revealed the total failure of their policy in Libya. Remember, in Libya, what they did is they embraced the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, the ambassador to Libya was killed by the very people who we had aligned ourselves with to overthrow Gaddafi. If that would have, when that story becomes more clear and more public, it shows the total failure and the disastrous foreign policy that her and the president embarked on.
Alan Dershowitz, there perhaps are legal consequences as well as political consequences. Of course, the court ruled that the State Department could not do a grand email dump early next year. They had to offer them in rolling fashion. What does this mean both legally and politically to the former First Lady?
Well, first of all, Sidney Blumenthal is a political operative. He's not a State Department expert. She was getting his assessment, and then she was getting the State Department's assessment. Also, of course, she worked for the Obama administration. So if you want to point a finger of blame for this, it's at the Obama administration. She was simply implementing the policies and repeating the conclusions that had been reached, erroneous to be sure, as we now know, at that time. So I don't think it's quite fair to point the finger at her as the Secretary of State. One has to point the finger at the President and the people in the State Department who were making this assessment. And the real question is, did they believe it when they said it, or were they playing political games? I think it's a fair point to assess in a political debate. And of course, she being the Secretary of State bears some responsibility for it, but the responsibility is diffuse. Legally, I'm happy that the courts have ruled that these materials should come out sooner than later. I do think that the American public has the right to see everything and to judge for themselves, and it could have an impact on the election.
All right, so we have your gentleman's assessment on that, and we appreciate it. Let's go to another topic. Actually, an appearance today as President Obama visited a Washington, D.C. synagogue, hoping to mend some fences with Jewish voters. Let's take a listen to one thing he said.
Those values compel us to say that our commitment to Israel's security and my commitment to Israel's security is and always will be unshakable. I can say that no U.S. president, no administration has done more to ensure that Israel can protect itself.
Alan, you have been outspoken on this very program about President Obama and Israel. Do you believe his commitment to Israel's security to be unshakable?
Well, I do, but I think that when he says he supports Israel's ability to defend itself, that doesn't include against Iran. Look, he picked this conservative synagogue very carefully. It's a synagogue that has a rabbi who is very supportive of him, that has Jeff Goldberg, who has written admiringly of him in the congregation. He picked his audience very well. He made a great speech. I approve of what he said in the speech, and I've just written a Newsmax column saying, though I remain critical of his position on Iran, and I don't think he handled the Netanyahu relationship very diplomatically or effectively, I think the criticism of him should be nuanced and calibrated. And he has provided Israel with lots of weaponry and lots of intelligence. And Israel, of course, has provided the United States with lots of intelligence, and they jointly developed the Iron Dome. But I disagree and will continue to disagree with his Iran policy. It's not that he's wrong when he says the choices now may be between bad and worse. He's wrong to have gotten us into the position where we have to choose between bad and worse. And Israel may not be able to accept that choice ultimately.
Pete, in his speech today, the president again called for a two-state resolution, saying that it's necessary for Israel's security. Do you agree with that assessment, Pete?
Oh, I think so. I met with a number of people in Israel in the last week and a half. I think they're committed to moving forward. There's a difference on strategy, but they're very skeptical about this administration being able to work with Israel and being able to work with the Palestinian to actually reach that conclusion, because they sense a weakness right now in America and a failure to leadership. They're not only concerned about the negotiations with Iran, they're concerned with the negotiations, the war that's going on right now with ISIS and the engagement of this administration with the radical Muslim Brotherhood and other groups that no administration had really reached out to before.
I think that's right, and I do think it's going to be much harder to get a two-state solution under Obama than it would be under a new president, whether it be a Democrat or Republican. I think Obama has lost the confidence of the Israeli people and the Israeli leadership, as well as of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian leadership. He has not handled this process very well at all.
And on that note, gentlemen, we will have to end the discussion. Alan Dershowitz, we thank you. Pete Hoekstra, we thank you. Again, Alan's book, Terror Tunnels, The Case for Israel's Just War Against Hamas. Where do you stand on this? I'd love to hear from you via social media. You can email me. There's also Facebook and Twitter. And there's more coming up.